Okay. Now, go ahead and start from the beginning, sir.
As I was saying, in October of 1954, I was invited to the office of James Neighborhood, who had been chief lawyer in Shop v. Bolin, the D.C. component in Brown v. and asked to apply for law school at the end of my junior year to the top 10 law schools in the country and to the University of Virginia in Charlottesville to compel Virginia to abandon massive resistance to desegregation. I had been on radio with Adam Clayton Powell the year before Brown came down protesting segregation in America. And I coined a hashtag, what you call now hashtag, that a person should judge by the quality of his performance, not the accident of his birth, not the color of his skin, but how well he performs and as an individual. Neighbor told the gentleman sitting next to the wall, "This is our Virginia scholar. He is the person you want." That person was Thurgood Marshall. And they asked me to become the lead plaintiff in the Prince Edward Farmville school cases and to apply to law school at the end of my junior year in what they call the 6-year program. I said what I want to say here to go to Howard and Howard's Law School because of its historic significance. And I don't want to give up honors. I had summa cum laude standings. I was number 1 in my class. They said, well, you can go on to law school at the beginning of your senior year, but decline or waive receiving a combination degree and come back in the 2 summers between your law school years and finish the needed hours you need for a 4-year program. I went on and applied under those circumstances, and I told my mother and father in Thanksgiving that I wasn't going to Howard Law School, and they thought I'd given up my dream of going to law school and becoming a lawyer. I said, it's not that. I've been asked to participate in this Brown case, the one that abolished segregation. But Dad, it may mean you'll lose your job. It may mean, Mom, that they'll burn crosses on our yard. It may mean that you will be raped and then killed. And my mother started reciting the 23rd Psalm. And I remember her saying, the Lord is your shepherd, you shall not want. And I kind of faded out till she got those 2 lines that says, yea, though you walk through the valley of shadow of death, you should fear no evil. And I breathed. And my father said, I'll take the rest. I caddy for those guys who play golf where Negro or colored players can't play. But your uncle runs a cab company, and I can always drive a cab and find part-time job. We knew God gave you a good talent to be a brilliant student in school. You do it with our blessing. And I went back and told neighbors my parents were 100% committed to me being a plaintiff and going forward to compel Virginia to abandon massive resistance to desegregation. And they said, well, then we are going forward and to make plans to file a petition, a complaint in the U.S. District Court in Richmond, Virginia, or Alexander, and you as the lead plaintiff to compel the University of Virginia Law School to admit you in the fall of '55. The Klan was making noises at that point that any nigger kid, and they used the word nigger freely in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, the Washington Post, and other news media. And they say, we'll talk to the Attorney General. And then along about February, March, they told me they had gotten Herb Brunell to agree to give me 2 deputy U.S. Marshals to live with me 24 hours a day to keep me alive. And I said, okay, well, I'm not turning back now. I've come this far. I'll go through with it if it even means putting my life on the line. And then end of April, neighbor called me to his office again, and I thought they were going to tell me they had filed a complaint to add me as the lead plaintiff to compel the law school to knuckle under. Neighbor in a loud, disappointed voice said, Marshall, and the NFCP decided they don't have enough money, enough lawyers to go forward both in Virginia and deal with Fordham Orbis and his threat to close all colored schools in Arkansas from kindergarten through high school. No schools for Negro kids at all. We're disappointed, Arthur, but we want you to go through with your plans. My plans were to go on to Columbia, but 3 weeks in May, after this case was settled, NYU made me an offer to give me a full faculty scholarship and make me a teaching assistant in the Master's of Law program. And I chose to go to NYU with the equivalent of 2 full scholarships, where I was the only Negro kid in my class. My professors were equalitarian. I'd go to law school with the idea of going into military service, becoming an Air Force JAG officer, Judge Advocate General Office. But in my second year, I was as high as number 11 in my class out of 300 students. And they persuaded me to apply to the Justice Department to become an honors attorney. I applied, graduated with honors both from Howard in '57, summa cum laude, from law school in June of '58. Less than 6 months apart for the 2 degrees. Went to the Justice Department, pled with my local draft board that I had applied for a JAG commission in the Air Force, and they told me that I was in the top candidates being considered, but I was drafted into the Army as a private E1, even though I passed the bar and was one of the first 2 Negroes to desegregate the Bar Association of D.C. October 20th, 1958. But on November 17th, I had to report for duty in the U.S. Army as a private E1. It's just as if I had a high school education. They would not hold off forcing me to go into service. Second day I was on active duty, I was made an active sergeant. Then the second 8 weeks, I was made a professor teaching Army Personnel Administration. Shipped to Fort Ord, and I was disappointed because instead of assigning me to the law department at Fort Ord, they assigned me to the personnel office to be the chief personnel assistant to the commanding officer of a brigade and the sergeant major of 5 battle groups, 25 companies. Lo and behold, fate intervened, and the commanding general, deputy commanding general of Fort Ord, California, were killed in a plane crash. The colonel that headed the brigade was made acting post commander, and he persuaded the Army to designate and give me the power to serve as acting colonel, that he would sign all the documents, but that I would oversee the operation of the 3rd Brigade. And he signed all the paperwork I did, but I performed his functions. And eventually, and I had signed, since I was in the Army, to put an Army ROTC commission in September of '59. After almost 2 years on active duty, I was offered a JAG commission in the Army, but they had a price tag to it. I would have to stay on active duty another 4 years. And I decided that I didn't want to be tied with the Army for 6 years. Mm-hmm. I turned that down. I was tied with the military and went back to the Justice Department. And I got back to the Justice Department. The Kennedy administration had just been, Jack Kennedy had just been elected. He was sworn in on January 20. And on January 21, 1961, Bobby Kennedy called for me. He said, of all the Negroes I've ever met, or colored people, I'm not sure whether he used color or Negro, you had the most brilliant academic record of any colored Negro. I want you to be my special assistant. Keep me advised of all the major criminal cases, government corruption, the labor union problems, the Jimmy Hoffa case. But then he knocked me off my feet. He said, but that's your cover. I said, what do you mean? He said, I want you to be my special assistant to monitor the civil rights movement, to monitor Martin Luther King and make sure the Communist Party does not interfere and try to cause a second civil war in this nation. I want you to make sure the FBI do not engage in any unlawful practices. I think you used the term unlawful before we start using sting operations and so
Right.
forth. And to make sure the black leaders, and you were able to put your life on the line for civil rights, I think I can trust you to be my informant. I'm going to tell everybody you my valet and butler so that they won't pump you for information. But I'm going to tell Herbert Hoover, you are my reader. You are my person to keep me advised of the civil rights movement. I believe you have the courage, the fortitude, and standards to do it. Will you raise your right hand? You will be sworn in to be the equivalent of a CIA agent. To keep secrets, you're not even to tell your wife what you're doing. You can only talk to me, to Wizard White, who was then Deputy Attorney General, or to President Kennedy himself. Other than those three people, you should not disclose anything that's classified. Are you prepared to take that oath? And I did. And from that point on, I was told by Bobby Kennedy, Hoover will know you are my reader and advisor. Your phone will be tapped. They will assign an FBI agent to tell you to make sure you do not disclose any classified information to the press or any other source. I believe you have the courage, you have the standards that you were able to do it. I said, Mr. Attorney General, I will do it. And I started my role of being Bobby Kennedy's man or reader. And when I told him what was in the reports, he would pick up the phone and call Jack Kennedy and tell Jack Kennedy what was going on in the Martin Luther King operations. Then two other events occurred of historic significance. One was that Martin Luther King came to Washington for a camp out for a week on the Mall. And I was asked to be the undercover agent, to pretend that I was part of Martin's entourage. The only thing was that I could not stay there and sleep at night, but they wanted me on the Mall the whole time, every day, 7 days that week, to make sure there was no unrest, to make sure the police did not provoke any riots. Here you have my confidential number. You call me, and for half hour, 45 minutes, we'll have the National Guard of the military on the Mall. You think you can do that? And I said, no problem. I'll do it. And for that week, Martin was on the Mall and wrote his I Have a Dream speech. Everybody thought I was a member of his entourage. I was the undercover agent for the president and Bobby Kennedy that particular week. There were no efforts to cause unrest, no nationalists or other segregationists or anyone else causing any unrest. Everything went peaceful. Ironically, my wife was in GW Hospital having our second son, and I was on the Mall with Martin Luther King to advance the cause of civil rights in this country. And then there came a day in November of '63, probably the most memorable day in my life. Jack Kennedy was assassinated, shot in Dallas, Texas. Within 5 to 10 minutes of news coming to Washington, Bobby Kennedy called for me. And he said, Arthur, my brother Jack has just been killed. I'm his brother. I can't handle it. I'm going to recuse myself, and I want you to be me for the day. I want you here with me. I want you to be my proxy, to act as Attorney General in directing the Lee Harvey Oswald event, to be a direct person from justice talking to Barefoot Sanders, then U.S. Attorney who later became a U.S. District Court Judge, talking to the FBI on subjects I can't tell you about now. But you can imagine whether Oswald acted alone or acted with other people, or the nature of that inquiry. And about 3 a.m. that morning, Barbara said, "You've been here all day today and you've done the job as well as I would have. Call your wife, go home and get some sleep." She picked me up shortly after 3 a.m. I went home and we fell off asleep in about 5 minutes to 10. She woke me up and told me Jack Ruby had gotten in and killed Oswald. And today, and for many days, I have often wondered, had I still been at the switch, I would have done something, or could have done something that had prevented Jack Ruby from killing Lee Harvey Oswald, and we wouldn't know the truth of what really happened.
Sir,
And why Lee Oswald did what he did, and under what circumstances. That has gnawed me for the rest of my life. Had I not left and gone home pursuant to Bobby's suggestions and humanity, I could get some sleep because I'd been there since about 8 o'clock a.m. that morning, almost, say, 20-some hours. I could have prevented Ruby from killing the President of the United States.
Mr. Burnett, could you give your name again for the camera?
Arthur Louis, Louis, Burnett Sr.
Well, sir, thank you for all you've done for humanity. It's been an honor meeting you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Damon Fordham, coming live to you from the Association of African American Studies, Life and Studies Convention in Charleston, South Carolina, on October the 3rd, 2019, speaking with a major portion of U.S. history, Mr. Arthur Burnett. Thank you for listening.